moved into the apartment with Marco, I thought I had found the ideal roommate. He was quiet, studious, and above all, seemed to respect my privacy. But as many things in life, first impressions can be deceivingly peaceful. Everything started to change after a month of sharing the apartment. Marco had a habit of leaving his room open when he went out, and I never bothered to do otherwise. Our mutual trust seemed solid, until the day I came home early from university and found him not in his room but in mine, rummaging through my things. "Oh, hey," he said, a bit too loudly, straightening up quickly. "Just looking for a pen. You know how it is, I lost all of mine." "It's okay," I replied, although a disquieting feeling began to tingle at the back of my neck. "I think there are some in the desk drawer." Marco smiled, thanked me, and left my room, but something about his smile wasn't right. It was a bit forced, as if he was hiding something. Over the next few days, that uneasy feeling didn't leave me, growing slowly as small things began to seem out of place. A book wasn't on the shelf where I had left it. My clothes seemed to have been tampered with, and even the settings on my computer seemed different. That's when I decided that I needed to check what was going on. With Marco at the library, I cautiously entered his room. The place was a picture of order, except for a thick diary lying on his desk. Knowing I was invading his privacy, I hesitated. But curiosity and growing paranoia were stronger. I opened the diary and began to leaf through the pages. Initially, they were normal entries about his day-to-day life. But as I read on, the entries began to include mentions of me. At first, they were harmless observations, but soon the descriptions became detailed, narrating not only what I was doing, but also what I was saying, and frighteningly, what he imagined I was thinking. With each page turned, my heart raced faster. Marco wrote about me with growing obsession, detailing plans on how to influence my decisions and even control aspects of my daily routine. The last entry, dated just a day ago, talked about adjusting reality to make me dependent on him. I closed the diary, my mind spinning with the terror of what I had discovered. I knew I needed to act. I talked to a university counselor and the police, but without explicit threats or concrete actions, they could do little. I decided to confront Marco directly. His reaction was eerily calm. He admitted everything without a hint of hesitation, as if it was perfectly normal to want to control another person so completely. "We're friends, aren't we? Friends look out for each other," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. In the following days, I changed the locks on my room and started sleeping with white noise in the background to drown out any sound. Marco never tried anything violent, but the fear of his intentions kept me constantly on edge. Eventually, I managed to transfer my lease to another apartment and moved out, leaving Marco and his obsessive diary behind. Even now, in my new home, I sometimes find myself checking twice to make sure the doors are locked and the windows are securely closed. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild, especially when someone knows you better than you know yourself.
When it comes to safety, I've always considered myself to be prudent. But after recent events in the apartment I share with Lena, my sense of security has been completely shattered. Lena and I had been sharing the apartment for almost a year without incident. She seemed to be the ideal roommate, organized, responsible, and always paid her rent on time. However, a few weeks ago, I started noticing things going missing. A bit of money here, a watch there, even some jewelry that I had left on top of my dresser. Initially, I thought I might be forgetting where I placed my things, but the frequency of these disappearances and the lack of a reasonable explanation led me to suspect something more sinister. I decided to install a hidden camera in my room to find out what was really going on. Nothing happened on the first night with the camera, or the second. But on the third night, the recording revealed something truly disturbing. At 2:37 a.m., while I was deeply asleep, the door to my room slowly opened. Lena entered, moving with an almost supernatural caution. She rummaged through my desk, opened my jewelry drawer, and what was worse, approached the bed where I was sleeping. What I saw next chilled my blood. Lena leaned over me, her face inches from mine, and whispered things that I could barely understand when watching the recording. They were veiled threats, mixed with nonsensical words, but the tone was clear. There was a bitterness there, a barely contained rage. When I confronted her with the recording the next day, Lena's reaction was pure shock. Not at being caught, but at seeing herself in that state. She didn't remember any of what she had done, or at least that's what she claimed. "I don't know what to say," she stammered, hands trembling. "I don't remember any of this. That's not me." The situation only worsened. Digging deeper, I discovered that Lena was undergoing treatment for dissociative identity disorder. The nights she invaded my room coincided with days she had forgotten to take her medication. The revelation brought more fear than relief. Though part of me wanted to help her, another part was terrified by what more could happen if we continued living together. The decision was painful but necessary. Lena moved out to live with a family member who could oversee her treatment closely. Since then, peace has returned to my apartment, but the feeling of security I had before has never fully returned. Every shadow seems to hide a secret, and every door that closes sounds like a prelude to something bad. The camera is still there, hidden among my books. Perhaps part of me will never again be able to sleep without being sure that I can see what happens while I'm vulnerable.
Since I moved into the apartment with Evelyn and Alex, life seemed to finally be settling down. We got along well, shared household chores, and occasionally cooked together. But this harmony began to crumble in a way I could never have imagined. It all started with a letter. I found it slipped under the apartment door one Monday morning. It was a simple message, written in letters cut out of magazines, like something out of a suspense film. "Be careful who you trust." Initially, I thought it was a tasteless prank from a friend, but after showing it to Evelyn and Alex and seeing genuine concern on their faces, I began to take the threat more seriously. In the following days, more letters arrived. Each one was more disturbing than the last, detailing moments of my routine that only someone very close could know. "We know what you did last night," one of them said, referring to a simple walk I had taken in the park, alone. Another letter mentioned what I had cooked for dinner, and one even referred to a private conversation I had with my mother over the phone. The tension within the apartment grew exponentially. Suspicions and veiled accusations started to emerge in conversations, and the comfort of our home was replaced by a constant vigilance among us. Evelyn and Alex also received their own letters, and the mutual distrust isolated us from each other. Determined to solve the mystery, I installed hidden cameras in the living room and kitchen, the common areas of our apartment. The recordings revealed nothing for the first few days. However, on a rainy night, while Evelyn and Alex were out, I captured something disturbing. A neighbor from the floor below, who rarely spoke to us, was seen slipping one of the letters under our door. I confronted the neighbor the following day with the evidence in hand. He was an older, solitary man who admitted to sending the letters. His justification was surreal. He believed that by making us distrust each other, he could protect Evelyn, for whom he harbored a silent obsession, thinking Alex and I were bad influences. The aftermath of the situation was bitter. Evelyn, shaken, decided to move out, unable to cope with the invasion of her privacy. Alex and I continued for a while, but the atmosphere was never the same again. The letters stopped, but the feeling of being watched never really went away. Now, whenever I see a letter in the entrance hall, my heart skips a beat for a second, fearing that the past might come back to haunt our present. I learned the hard way that sometimes danger can come from where we least expect it, hidden behind a facade of normality. I was desperately in need of a place to live. After weeks of searching, I finally found a room available in a house shared with 3 other residents. The price was affordable and the location was perfect. However, the atmosphere of the house always seemed a bit off. During the tour, I noticed one of the rooms was locked. "It's just a storage room," Alice, the longest-standing resident, explained. The other roommates, Jason and Hannah, just nodded, avoiding my gaze. Something about the situation felt odd, but I was so desperate for a place that I decided to overlook these red flags. For the first few days, everything seemed normal, but soon I began to notice little signs that something was wrong. There were strange noises coming from the locked room at night, sounds of footsteps, the creaking of furniture, and even muffled whispers. When I asked about the noises, my roommates shrugged it off, saying the house was old and made noises naturally. Curiosity and restlessness kept me from sleeping. One night, determined to find out the truth, I stayed up until everyone else had gone to bed and crept up to the locked room. Pressing my ear against the door, I could clearly hear someone breathing on the other side. My heart raced, and a wave of fear overcame me. The next day, I confronted Alice about the room. Under pressure, she finally spilled the truth. The room belonged to a former roommate, David, who had disappeared without a trace a few months ago. Since then, strange things began happening, and they were afraid to open the room and find something they didn't want to. Together, we decided to open the room. What we found was a space frozen in time, with personal belongings still scattered as if David would return at any moment. The most disturbing, however, were the walls, covered with photos and newspaper clippings, all related to mysterious disappearances in the city. The atmosphere in the house changed completely after that discovery. We called the police, who began an investigation. It was revealed that David was involved in criminal activities related to those disappearances. The house, until then, seemed to be under the weight of his absent presence. I moved out shortly after, unable to deal with the dark energy the discovery brought. David's room was emptied and the lock changed, but the feeling that something or someone had never really left that house remained with me. To this day, I avoid that street. The memory of what might be hidden behind closed doors is enough to keep me awake at night. When Billy moved into the apartment, I thought he would just be another roommate with whom I would share some bills and occasional dinners. I could never have imagined that things would take such a bizarre and disturbing turn. Billy was a quiet guy, of few words, but with a peculiar interest in routines and habits. At first, I thought it was just part of his methodical personality. However, over time, I began to notice subtle changes around the apartment that made me uncomfortable. It started with small things. My preferred brand of coffee was replaced by the one Billy liked. My recorded TV shows were deleted and replaced with his favorites. Initially, I shrugged off these changes, thinking maybe we were just trying to find a middle ground to share the space. But then, the changes became more personal. My clothes began to disappear from the closet, replaced by others that were not my style, but very much like what Billy wore. My science fiction books were pushed to the back of the shelf, making room for the historical novels he preferred. Even the arrangement of the furniture in my room was altered while I was at work. I confronted Billy about these changes. He simply smiled, a calm smile that didn't reach his eyes, and said, "Isn't it better this way? More organized, more harmonious." I didn't know how to respond. There was no harmony in this, just a growing sense that I was being erased from my own home. Each day that passed, I felt as if Billy was trying to mold me into his image, transforming my life into the life he wanted to have. Things reached a critical point when I found a photo of myself that had been altered to make me look more like him. That's when I realized I was no longer safe in my own home. I decided it was time to take action. I gathered evidence of the changes and went to the police, but without proof of a crime, they could do little. The solution came in the form of a new job in another city, an opportunity I seized without hesitation. On moving day, as I packed up my remaining belongings, Billy watched in a way that made me question whether he was satisfied or planning his next replacement. I left the apartment without looking back, taking only what was essential. I learned the hard way that sometimes the greatest threat may not come from an intruder, but from someone who lives under the same roof.